All right, today I'm going to talk about the worst leg breaks in UFC history. We've seen it a few times, and when fighters break their legs, it is so shocking. But we shouldn't be that surprised, because if you think about it, anytime you throw a weapon at somebody, full force, things can go wrong. I've broken both hands. I have a massive swollen hand there. When you throw a punch, you can break your hand. And as we've seen time after time, when you throw a leg kick, your leg can break, your leg can snap, and it can be the end of your career. But the reality is leg kicks are such an important weapon when it comes to a good fighter. It is an essential part of a good fighter's arsenal. And in fact, here's the crazy stat for you. Fighters that win by knockout, on average, they land 7% more leg kicks than a fighter that wins via decision. 7%. That's a pretty big statistical difference. And this underlines just how effective leg kicks are. And the reality is that leg kicks not only set up stoppages, but they can finish fights themselves. We've seen this many times. Amanda Nunes, the Lioness, she stopped Shayna Baszler in just 2 minutes back in 2015 with a brutal leg kick. Edson Barboza, the Brazilian, I mean, what a kicking game he has. He has stopped so many people with leg kicks. Rafael Oliveira stopped him with kicks to the thighs. Dustin Poirier, as we know, he chopped down the legs of Conor McGregor before he stopped him in the second fight. Jose Aldo, the king of Rio, I mean, he would use them back in the day. I mean, when he destroyed Uriah Faber, granted, he didn't get the stoppage, but he absolutely butchered those thighs, and the list goes on. But along with everything inside the octagon, it all comes at a price. It all comes with a risk versus reward. Sure, you might do some damage, but the risk is you can potentially break your own leg. Now, what you got to understand about leg kicks is this, okay? UFC fighters who are good at using leg kicks, they are kicking with around 8,000 to 10,000 newtons of force, and of course, depending on how good their technique is. Now, what is a newton? I don't know, but my channel manager told me. A newton, 1 newton, means how much force it takes to move 1 kilogram by 1 meter in 1 second, okay? 10,000 newtons is the equivalent pressure on your legs as 10 220-pound men suddenly standing on your shoulders. Sounds like a lot of pressure. Leg fractures could actually occur in young, healthy bones at around 3,500 newtons. So 10,000 newtons, I mean, you're taking the piss. The reality is the reason we don't see more leg breaks in mixed martial arts is because, or Thai boxing, or any sport that throws leg kicks, is because the legs are surrounded by muscle, and that protects the bones quite significantly. But as we know, listen, we got some high-profile leg breaks. We have seen some awful leg breaks along the way. And right now, I'm going to give you a list of the worst leg breaks in UFC history. Now, this list is not in numerical order, okay? But we're going to start going back to 2008. Corey Hill versus Dale Hart. Corey Hill was on The Ultimate Fighter. Now, listen, if you ever saw him fight, you know he was freakishly thin. And in retrospect, if anyone was going to suffer the first leg break in UFC history from a checked leg kick, come on, it was a 6'4" lightweight. Now, Corey Hill, sadly, he's not with us anymore, okay? Rest in peace. But he had very little leg muscle to protect his bones from the impact of his own leg. Now, when he fought Dale Hart back in 2008, the leg break came kind of early in the second round. This happened in 2008. Hill landed a leg kick, but he broke his own shin clean in half. The fibula and the tibia both snapped in two. Now, Hill did make a full recovery, I'm glad to say, but he never fought again in the UFC. He did compete outside of the UFC, but tragically, he passed away due to a heart attack at the young age of 36 years old. As I said before, rest in peace, Corey Hill. All right, the next one on the list is Anderson Silva versus Chris Weidman in 2013. And this was insane. Anderson Silva was the man, the consensus GOAT. He was knocking everybody out, okay? And as shocking as Corey Hill's injury had been, seeing it happen to somebody like Anderson Silva was even more stunning, okay? Now, you got to remember, this was a rematch for the middleweight title. The first fight, Anderson Silva was goofing around a little bit, kind of underestimated Chris Weidman and got caught with that punch, hit the deck, and that was that. Chris Weidman was the middleweight champion of the world, and rightly so. Now, in the rematch, Anderson Silva came into this one very confident as well, but Chris Weidman is an incredible fighter, and he's back in action this weekend. He checked a lot of Anderson Silva's leg kicks in round one, but in round two, Anderson went out there. They were one of the trademarks of his game back in the early days. And in round two, Anderson Silva's leg snapped clean in half just above the foot. Now, this was a horrific scene. I'll never forget it. I was there. I was ringside for this fight with a good friend of mine. I was sitting there watching it. Anderson Silva was one of the GOATs, one of the best ever, one of my heroes, one of my idols, a man that I always aspire to fight and to be like, if I'm honest. And to see him snap his leg like that, man, it was haunting. And you know what was more haunting? When he got stretchered past me, because he got lifted out of the octagon, put it on a stretcher and walked past me, and I was sitting there with my friend and I look at him and the man is just howling in agony. And that is something that I will never forget. Now, Anderson Silva said that he didn't look at his leg during the ride to the hospital or until after the operation. He felt so nauseous seeing his leg in that position. And again, both the tibia and the fibula were broken clean in two. And unbelievably, Anderson Silva was back in action versus Nick Diaz just 11 months later. I mean, what a man, what a guy. What a shocking scene. All right, moving on. This time it's Chris Weidman's turn. I'm telling you, if you put this in a Hollywood script, people would not believe you. So a guy goes out there, challenges the champion snaps his leg. But then a little bit later, the challenger, Chris Weidman, is going to break his leg as well. If you put that in a Hollywood script, they would say, nah, this is too far-fetched. This is nonsense. People are not going to buy it. But if you know the sport of mixed martial arts, this is exactly what happened when Chris Weidman fought Uriah Hall at UFC 261 in 2021. Uriah Hall and Weidman, they'd fought before. Weidman was the victor, got the job done, knocked him out inside round one. But Weidman went on to become the champion, defended the belt many times, and then went on a bit of a losing streak. So he fought Uriah Hall. And at UFC 261, as I say, the Hollywood script that nobody would believe did actually happened. It was so shocking. Weidman threw a leg kick just seconds into the fight and suffered the exact same injury that Anderson had suffered against him 8 years before. And sadly for him, the surgery didn't go well. He had to have a second surgery and that kept him out for 2.5 years. And he is returning. This weekend, he will be back in action, taking on Brad Tavares, August 2023, UFC 292. All the best to you, Chris. I wish you nothing but luck. Now we're moving on to July 2022. Tom Aspinall versus Curtis Blades. Tom Aspinall was flying high, riding a massive win streak, finishing everyone inside the first round. And he was giving Curtis Blades as his true, real first test. Like someone that was a real contender, maybe a bad matchup for him. They went out there and just a few seconds into the fight, 15 seconds, Tom throws a leg kick, drops on the floor in absolutely howling in agony. I'm telling you, I walked in there to interview Curtis Blades, and I will never forget that sight of seeing Tom Aspinall led on the floor at 6'6", a gigantic man clutching his leg and almost crying like a baby. Tom Aspinall's a good friend of mine. I've got so much respect for the man, but I'm telling you, that was hard to see, regardless of who it was or whether or not you're friends with him. To see a man that size holding his leg, clutching it like that in so much pain, it just shows these men and women are risking their health every time they step in there. Now, as it turns out, Tom had torn his MCL completely. He had a torn meniscus and he had bad ACL damage. Now, he did return a year later, got back to winning ways, took out Marcin Tybura in record time. And if you speak to Tom, even though he came back and was victorious, for him, there was a very, very dark period. He didn't think he would ever go through this again. He didn't think he would even fight again. In fact, he wasn't sure he even wanted to because of it. But as it turns out, it was a blessing in disguise because his leg injury was because of his bones not aligning perfectly, and it caused him a great amount of pain, a great amount of difficulty, and actually held him back. And now he's flying on all cylinders, knocked out Marcin Tybura, and he has designs of becoming the heavyweight champion pretty soon. And now we'll move on to one of the most high-profile leg breaks in all of UFC history. Of course, the notorious one. Conor McGregor versus Dustin Poirier, UFC 264 2021. Now, of course, this was the rubber match between two heated rivals. McGregor knocked him out quick fashion back in the day. In the second one in Abu Dhabi, Poirier got revenge. And this one going down at the T-Mobile Arena in Las Vegas, there was bad blood. Nice McGregor was gone. Nasty McGregor was back.
Conor, in the build-up to the last fight, you were unusually kind to Dustin. Now on fight week, it's the exact opposite. So when did that switch happen?
Because he got knocked the fuck out.
He was talking all kinds of shit, but that didn't help him. Poirier put it on him, took him down, pounded him a little bit. They got back on the feet, and it was right near the end of the first round. They were going back and forth. They were landing some shots, and McGregor stepped back and all of a sudden fell on the floor. From where I was standing, from the box where I was doing the ESPN pre- and post-fight show, very raised up high, it looked like Poirier had connected with a punch, but it wasn't a punch. The leg had broken once again.
Your wife is in me DMs, hey?
But the reality is that this wasn't clear until we saw the slow motion replay. And the slow motion replay showed that McGregor's leg had snapped just above the ankle as he landed his own kick. Now, later on, Conor did say that he had struggled with pain in that exact place throughout the entirety of the training camp. And it looked like a gradual weakening rather than a sudden snapping due to extreme pressure. And 2.5 years later, as we know, Conor McGregor has yet to return. Maybe it's going to be Michael Chandler. It could be Justin Gaethje. He wants Nate Diaz, and he's even calling out KSI in bare knuckle.
And I know your man KSI is in the crowd, yeah? And he couldn't box eggs if he worked in an egg boxing factory.
But anyway, there it is. Listen, the sport of mixed martial arts is one of the best sports on planet Earth. I have so much respect for everybody that steps in there, man or woman, because you really are putting your health on the line every single time. And as I say, leg kicks, they are such an important tool for any solid fighter. But just be careful when you throw them, because you might do damage to them or you might break your own leg. Thank you for watching. Subscribe, ring the bell. I'll see you soon.